going on, everybody, and welcome back for episode 4 of Swiss Cheese and Beats. My name is Daniel Ascari. We have a lot of things to get into today. We're gonna finish off the last 2 strokes, which are the tap and the upstroke. We're gonna learn a new exercise that includes 3 of the 4 strokes. And for the first time, we're gonna take and discuss an email question. So today's question comes from Julian in New Zealand. And Julian says that he's having trouble keeping the seal in his right hand fulcrum in place when he starts to play faster rhythms. He says he starts to tense up and his thumb starts to hurt. And Julian, first and foremost, thank you so much for the question. Thank you for watching all the way from New Zealand. So to answer your question, Julian, tensing up as you play faster is a very common thing among players. I think naturally it's our instinct to think that to play faster, we have to use more muscle. To play faster, you actually have to relax more. Think of it this way. The more you tense up, all you do is activate larger muscle groups. Those larger muscle groups have more weight to them. And physically, it's harder to move things of heavier weight fast than it is to move things of lighter weight. For example, if I have a 100-pound dumbbell, I'm not going to be able to move it from point A to point B as fast as I would be able to move a 5-pound dumbbell from the same point A to the same point B. The same goes true for your muscle groups. In order to play faster, especially when it comes to discussing single note rhythms, meaning everything except diddles, we have to use smaller muscle groups in our wrists. Something I like to tell students to do is if you place the heel of your hand on the pad or on the ground and you have your fingers up like this, you should be able to do this motion pretty quickly and pretty relaxed. By keeping the heel of your hand down, this keeps you from activating any of the larger muscles in your forearm and keeps you focused on the smaller muscle groups in your wrists. This feeling that you create is going to be the same feeling whenever you play fast single note rhythms such as 1/8 notes at a fast tempo, like so. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 2 different variations of exercises to play that's going to help you with this issue. The first is 8 on a hand, as we learned in episode 3. However, what we're going to do is we're going to make it 16 on a hand. So you're going to play 16 1/8 notes on each hand, except the first 8 are going to be decrescendo, meaning to get softer, and the second 8 will be decrescendo, meaning to get louder. So the exercise will go something like this. Now, as you get softer and louder in volume, you're going to feel different muscle groups in your hand activate to have greater control over the stick. I can tell you that as you play lower, 100% of the turn is going to come from the wrist. As you start to get louder, the back of your hand will then open up a bit, allowing the stick to rebound, which will then cause you to use some of your forearm muscles. So once again, here's just one hand of it. Make sure that when you're practicing this exercise, you start at a nice slow tempo. That way you can feel the activation of the muscle groups. The second exercise I'm going to give you is a variation of 8 on a hand as well, except this one's going to include 1/8 note triplets and even a count of 16th notes. So the first measure of the exercise is going to be 8 1/8 notes, and the second measure is going to be a measure of 1/8 note triplets. You're going to play this on the right hand and the left hand, like so. You're going to repeat these same 2 measures, except on count 4 of the second measure, instead of playing an 1/8 note triplet, you're going to play 4 16th notes. So the second time you play this exercise, it's going to sound like this. Something to take notice about this exercise is that as I move to the triplets and the 16th notes, you're going to notice that my arms aren't moving as much. And the reason that is because I'm isolating the motion to my wrists. By doing so, I'm using smaller muscle groups, which is going to be less weight, which in turn is going to be easier to move faster. So all together now, here's the exercise. I know that if you work on these two things, it's definitely gonna help the issue you have. Once again, thank you so much for sending a question in. If any of you have a question, even if it's about something we're not covering in a video and you'd like me to answer it for you, please send me an email. You can reach me at swisscheesebeats@gmail.com, or you can follow me on Instagram, send me a DM there, and I'll be happy to include your question in one of the future episodes. Now let's get to the next fundamental stroke. This is gonna be a tap stroke. A tap stroke starts in the low position and ends in the low position. Now, where exactly do we set up the low position? This is something very important for you to be aware of. I see a lot of students set up the low position, meaning where they place the bead and how far that is from the drum head, a little bit too close to it. The reason this is an issue is because it causes you to do two things. One, it causes you to have to prep in order to play a low note, meaning you're gonna have to pull the stick up and then go back down. So instead of a motion of just going straight down and straight up, they start too low and then they have a motion that looks like this. Instead, you want to make sure that the bead of the stick is slightly above your wrist line. What I mean by that is that if you were to take a look here at the bead of my stick, you would see that the height of it is slightly above the line of my wrist. That is about where you're going to want the bead of the stick as you rest over the drum head. What this is going to do is this is going to set you up to play a nice mature sound on the low end. So getting back to tap strokes, you're going to start in the low position, you're going to end in the low position, so a tap stroke would be something like this. Once again, remember that tap stroke should be 100% through the wrist, meaning as you play tap strokes, you should not be opening the back of your hand. If the stick is just going to be an extension of your wrist, and you're merely going to turn the wrist and lift back up. So if I were to play 8 on a hand at piano volume, all of my strokes would be tap strokes and would look and sound something like this. In my left hand, you may have noticed how my ring finger doesn't come off the stick at this low end. You don't need to because you're not controlling any type of rebound. Again, everything is through 100% wrist rotation. The last of the 4-stroke is going to be an upstroke. Much like the downstroke, it's going to do exactly what it sounds like. The starting position of an upstroke is going to be low, but the ending position will be high, like this. Once again, in the left hand. Once again. Bucks, or accent tap, is a very fundamental exercise that you'll hear many groups play. So you're going to have 8/8 notes. Your downbeats are going to be accented. And an accent just means to play the note emphasized at a louder volume. And your 4 upbeats are going to be non-accents. So the exercise would look something like this. As we discussed in episode 3, people don't play with their sticks in the prep position. Because of that, we have to account for the transition. In order for us to play a transition smooth and seamlessly, we have to keep the last note in whatever hand we're playing on in the low position. So in this case, we're going to have 4 downstrokes, 3 upstrokes, except the very last note in each measure is going to be a tap stroke. That tap stroke is going to allow us to transition smoothly into the left hand. Same thing goes when we're playing on the left hand. The very last note in the left hand will be a tap stroke, so we can transition back to the right hand. So this is going to be 2 measures of bucks. Watch for the tap strokes at the end of each measure, and for the very last note for the release, I'll play a single downstroke. This is another one of those exercises that can be played incredibly wrong. I would say the 2 most important things about this exercise are 1, to play the correct rhythm. Meaning, while it may just seem like it's 8th notes, a lot of people have a tendency to either crush or widen the space between 2 notes, creating an awkward rhythm. This would be an example of too close together. This would be an example of too far apart. The second most important thing is to make sure that you have 2 consistent volumes. You're going to have 1 volume for your downstrokes and 1 volume for your tap and your upstrokes. A lot of people will play many volumes like so. And this takes away from the consistency and the purpose of the exercise. So again, we want to focus on straight 8th notes, 2 volumes. now we've covered what I consider 2 of the 3 most important fundamental exercises. Next week, we're gonna get into some double beat or diddles. If you have yet to do so, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And if you have any specific questions you'd like me to answer, please shoot me an email, send me a direct message. You can also leave any questions you have in the comments section down below, and I'll be sure to respond to those pretty quickly. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time.